and somehow or another it weakens the position that you don't agree with. It's the opposite. The opposite happens. You pump up the only hope that they have of getting their side of the story out there. Their side of the story is going to be represented by Trump and Trump supporters. And I don't know what the president can or can't do to sort of enforce some sort of, I mean, we obviously have a new situation when it comes to communication in this country with social media and tech companies.
Yes.
It's very new. And it's really, it's only the last couple of decades it's even been a thing. And now it's one of the biggest things in terms of discourse and how people communicate and how people form opinions about things. That's a tremendous influence on our culture.
Yeah.
And the fact that this isn't protected by the First Amendment, we have a very strange new force in our country when it comes to discourse. And I think laws need to be formed. We need to have some sort of parameters. There's laws on virtually everything. And virtually everything that has massive influence over the way it affects our country. And that's one where there isn't really. They're independent companies, and they can do whatever they want.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Yeah. It's limitless. I think I agree with you. I agree with you both with regards to the tech companies, but also this bigger kind of culture war that's happening in our country, this cancel culture that exists. That I think it threatens the kind of freedom of speech and discourse that I think we've celebrated in this country for so long, where this is the country where you can stand up and say what you believe, no matter how terrible I may think it is or how strongly I may disagree with it. People like us are willing to lay our life down for your right to do that. And I think that's what is at risk here with this culture, this cancel culture that's having such a chilling effect, where people are maybe afraid to say something that may be seen as controversial or offensive to some, because they will get canceled. And in some cases, you've seen how people's, especially if you're a public figure, your whole career can be just like gone, finished.
Cancel culture is real simple. Everyone now has a rock. And there's a big window. Someone throws a rock at that window, and you're like, well, I'll fucking throw my rock too. And that's what happens. Yeah. People just, whether or not they have a strong opinion on something or not, they just decide that's the spot we're throwing the rocks.
Right.
And they just chuck the rocks. Right. And then they feel like they have some sort of if a politician gets taken down, they're like, look, I helped. Right. Look at my Twitter feed. My Twitter feed's filled with calling that guy a piece of shit.
I was the first one. I was the first one that did it. I think that you mentioned... was it happened in the debate? Kamala Harris she launched a petition or publicly was calling for Twitter to delete President Trump's account.
Yeah.
And she really, really made a big deal out of this, did a whole media tour, all this, called out Elizabeth Warren, all this stuff. I was asked about it by a reporter shortly after she had made this announcement. I had not even heard of it. What do you think about Kamala Harris calling on Twitter to cancel Trump's Twitter account? I said, well, I disagree with not everything, but a lot of what Trump says, but freedom of speech. Freedom of speech. So no, I completely disagree with her. And the response from her campaign spokesperson, no kidding, Tulsi Gabbard echoes Fox News talking points. Freedom of Fox News is saying, oh, well, what about freedom of speech?
By the way, Richard Spencer loves her.
Right. But that's this is where we're at. Just saying, hey, freedom of speech. You're the president, whether you're the president of the United States or you're the guy sweeping the floor in the White House, I will stand up and fight for your freedom of speech. I may disagree, and I may disagree publicly and strongly, but we've got to draw the line here for freedom of speech and being able to have this dialogue and discourse where we can. And I think that we should debate strongly and maybe passionately about some of these issues, not seeing that as a bad thing. That's been the strength of our country.
It'll be interesting, from a free market perspective, if at some point somebody comes out with a social media platform that is really, truly free speech.
Yeah,
right?
They have done that, but they get taken over by trolls.
There's ThinkSpot getting run around right now.
Gab's one.
Yeah, it'll just be, but people have told me, tech friends of mine that say that immediately turns into, 4chan and 8chan. It just immediately goes into the gutter.
It's an open sewer. It's just have you ever seen those pipes that pump sewage into the ocean? It's just green and disgusting. And it's not the fault of the social media companies. The companies like Gab, they're committed committed to free speech, and what they're trying to do is let it all work itself out and abide by the Constitution. Don't dox anybody. Don't give up anybody's address.
Right.
Don't threaten anybody or do any harm, and just talk crazy and do it anonymously. And that's what a lot of people are doing. But it's very difficult for even the people that felt like they were deplatformed or their voice wasn't being able to be heard. They don't want to join into this crazy shit because of 4chan and all those savages.
They're just trying to post pictures of their dinner, right?
Exactly. They can't even get it. It's so nuts. I mean, look. I mean, even posting pictures of your dinner. I mean, you do that on Instagram, and if it's a dead deer or something like that, you're risking getting your picture taken down. It's the amount of power that's being exhibited by these social media companies. Again, no one anticipated this. Yeah. What could be done? What do you think could be done? Like, say you become president. What would you do?
So I think there's two things here that we've talked about: the freedom of speech, the control over information. I think part and parcel to that we didn't really talk much about is how much of our private information these tech companies have and what they're doing with it. Maybe without us even knowing about how that's helping to drive up their profits. So I think it's both of those components we got to be concerned about. I think number one is we look at our antitrust laws that exist in this country for the protection of the consumer against any giant monopoly from coming in and being in a position to abuse their power, and apply those laws to these tech giants. I think the fact that Facebook owns, obviously, Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp, I think that is the definition of a monopoly across platforms that many of us use because there isn't really a legitimate alternative option available to us. So I think that's the first thing, and looking at breaking up these monopolies. I think Facebook's co-founder, is it Chris Hayes, I think is his name. I think he wrote, I think, a very compelling argument against Facebook monopoly, saying they have gotten way too powerful. They should not have been able to buy these other companies. And then the second thing is Congress actually digging down and passing laws that provide actual oversight and a level of accountability to ensure that our freedom of speech and our freedom to access information is not impeded by these tech giants, whether it's for their own profits or to pursue their own political interests. There's
people inside of Twitter that are like Jack Dorsey believes, and at least according to what he's told me, that Twitter should be like a town hall where everyone should be able to have access. But he faces resistance that inside the actual company that he's the CEO of. That there's so many people that don't think that that's the way it should be. And they think that they have a political or a social obligation to limit certain voices because those voices radicalize young people. Like, what do you say to those people?
I mean, without knowing examples of what they're citing, here's the thing is what they may view as radicalizing young people because of the ideology that they as individuals may hold on to, may be seen in the opposite way by people who hold a different political ideology. You know, I think this is something that that we're seeing happening offline as well. You know, whether it's in college campuses or in other places where both sides view the other side as indoctrinating young people or indoctrinating people with their ideology.